On the show today, we have guest Eric Soto-Shed, who is a lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, whose work centers on curriculum development and teacher training in K-12 history, civics, and social studies. He co-leads the Civics Thinking Project, advancing innovative civic assessments and curricula. As co-chair of the How People Learn course and instructor in curriculum design, he shapes future educators. Beyond Harvard, Soto-Shed consults with school districts, offers professional development for educators, and helps train teachers to use primary sources. With 25 years in education, including as a New York City teacher, he advocates for equity, inquiry, and support for underserved communities. Our other guest is Kara Pranikoff, who spent more than 2 decades in New York City schools. She has worked as a classroom teacher, reading interventionist, instructional coach, curriculum designer, and an adjunct instructor at Bank Street College of Education. As a consultant and coach, she nurtures educators in developing inquiry-based practices in social studies and writing that develop independent student thinking, voice, and a sense of belonging for all members of the community. Kara's book, Teaching Talk, A Practical Guide to Fostering Student Thinking and Conversation, shares ways to foster productive and independent student discussions in elementary and middle school classrooms. Get ready for a great episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-creating curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Eric and Kara, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast. I'm so excited you guys are here. So first, let's just talk about, we're all educators. I think common listeners have heard your voices or read about your ideas on the podcast before. But what should people know about you beyond kind of the professional educator bio? What are you bringing into the space today that you want people to know?
So, first of all, I'm so happy to be here and be in conversation with you, Lindsay, and you, Eric. So thanks for opening up this conversation. I think that it would help listeners to know that I have two college age kiddos. One is 23, one is 20. And so I have lived through lots of really difficult conversations. And I would say that I continually learn how to be in conversation around the topics that are happening in our world with my kids, even at age 23 and 20. So I just want to name it's a long life journey. Eric, what about you?
I would say that I've been in education and teaching and teacher education for 25 years, and I've been a parent for two. So I come to this with a great degree of humility and respect for parents. We have one child, and as I think about a second child, I'm in awe of what parents do, and so recognize the true wonder of it, love it, but also the true challenge, and just what kind of every stage, the wonders and challenges that it brings. And so that's just been really on my mind a lot. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is that, I've been at universities and working in academia for the past 15 to 20 years. I think there's a lot of wisdom in the world, a lot of wisdom in experience, a lot of wisdom in the ground, and a lot of wisdom in our day-to-day interactions. And so I hope to both learn from that and draw on that, as well as sort of the traditional academic frameworks as well.
Super appreciate broadening that horizon beyond like the white tower of academia and all of that stuff that feels very untouchable sometimes for like, what do I do now as I'm in the car going to get my kid and talking about this thing? So yeah, I really appreciate both of your perspectives, and I think this is going to be a really cool conversation. So I think the first question I kind of have is like, what are the possibilities for opening up conversation with your kids around, anything? Could be politics, current events, could be an interpersonal conflict that kid is having in their life, could be around kind of a quote unquote controversial issue, or I like to call them like high emotion issues as like a broad umbrella. But what's kind of possible, and or if you want to take it from the perspective of like not necessarily fear, but like a wondering of like, oh, if I'm in this moment, or maybe I've had this moment with my kid where I'm like, ooh, I don't know what to do here. Like, what comes to mind as you think about parenting and caretaking children at any age and having these tough conversations that bring up high emotions?
So first of all, I love that language, high emotion issues. And I love that it kind of encapsulates the emotions that we bring to things that are happening in our community, but also that interpersonal space, or even I think kids as they grow up kind of figuring out their own identity. There's a lot of high emotion around there. Um, so I think first and foremost, I think it's really important to get curious, right? To really ask your kid, I'm thinking about this thing, or you brought up this thing yesterday. I want to go back to it. And I'm kind of curious, what are you thinking about that issue? How are you feeling about that issue? I think it's important to let them have the space to lead the conversation where they want to take it. And then I would also say the corollary is to be honest about your own emotions. So I also think it's okay to say, I read this article this morning and I'm feeling this way. And here's why. And I'm trying to figure out how to wrestle with that. I'm wondering if you are too. So I think both things is where I might start.
And one thing you said there, Cara, that I thought was really interesting, and I just want to kind of amplify it, is also maybe leading with what you're thinking about, right? So when you invite curiosity to kind of say, like, this is what I'm thinking. So it's not
Mm,
just sort of like me probing you for what's on your mind, but really a conversation and sort of starting with the sharing, I think can be a really way to invite kids into the conversation. So I think that was just a really like subtle but important point.
yeah.
Um, and then it also relates to sort of a broader way I was thinking about it, where I was thinking about just listen, the importance of listening. And so I think curiosity is a really
Mm,
active way to listen, and I really appreciate that. And then other times, your kids might be talking, your kids might be writing, your kids might be communicating in ways where you can become aware of, okay, let me get a sense of what's on their radar, and then
mm,
use that as a springboard into the conversation. So I just think it's really kind of listening,
mm.
either with some active curiosity or just some attuneness to what kids are sharing. I think is really important and useful.
And I love the way you just named all the different ways that kids might share, right? It's not just verbal. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind also.
I was really
Uh,
thinking the same thing. That attunement is so
Mm,
it. Like sometimes I just notice in my parenting world, like that my kid will get very quiet. Like it just there's just like this quiet stillness. There's like a like unsettled look. And it's like normally really talkative, not talkative right now. Like, ooh, something's there. So like what is that? And can we, I think Cardi, your point, like, can we also like maybe we let it linger, maybe there's nothing to be said today, but I'm gonna ask the question anyways. I'm gonna let you think on it, and then I can
mm,
return tomorrow and I can check in tomorrow. Or that kid's gonna bring it back up on their own in the interim, which is so common, right? And that there's space for that, and there's not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna ask this question, and then there's gonna be this wonderful conversation. Like that's not always how it goes.
Does it ever go that way? I mean, I just would like to say that.
Yeah, and you know what that makes me think of too is this other point around this, when you begin that conversation, just be ready for a range of responses. If we're
Mm,
talking about emotions, a range of emotions. If we're talking about an engagement, a range of engagement, right? And part of that, Lindsay, again, I think was kind of you stated I want to amplify is around let's revisit this, right? And see if what I heard yesterday would seem to be disengagement or brush me off was just an initial sort of reaction and there's more there. Maybe
mm,
there's just not much of a response there, right? That is possible. There's so many issues in the world. I think of myself, right? Where sometimes something just hits me unbelievably hard and I'm shocked by that. And there's really intense stuff happening in the world where I'm like, wow, I'm not really having a response to that. And that kind of shocks me too. And so I think that as humans, we just have different responses. And so like let's not just pretend that we're going to say, hey, what's going on? And there's going to be this unbelievable flood of things. We can be prepared for the range, but like, what are the different ways we can kind of continue to follow through, ask about
mm.
different issues, or follow up with the same issue, and just expect a wide variety of possibilities.
I'm also thinking about we're all like former social studies teachers in the social studies realm, things that come up curricularly that I mean, we all were in that third and fourth grade space last year in the Massachusetts pilot for investigating history and thinking about, things that might even be things that you can plan to almost talk about, right? So current events are one thing or interpersonal relationship issues with your kid. It's like, oh, that pops up. Now I got to respond immediately in the moment, and that can be a challenge. But then there's also these like units that teachers are teaching and prepping for and can notify you in advance, or you see like this is gonna come next week in our class, like this is a text we're gonna read. I mean, ideally there's that kind of communication between school and home, but if you see that, like what are kind of those actions that you can think about, either from the teacher lens of what would have been helpful for families, or what has been helpful for families to engage with you and support kind of from the home perspective to support the work in the classroom, or from the family perspective, like how might you support, or have you supported any work that's going on in the classroom or in the school more broadly? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, we're thinking from both hats, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to take the teacher hat and then I'm going to do the parent hat. Is that okay? So I think from the teacher perspective, I think especially right now, teachers can be very afraid of communicating with their families. And I actually think that what we want more than anything is communication and is awareness. And so I would always encourage a teacher to write about something that's coming up in a unit, or even share, here's a little bit of a transcript from this conversation that happened in the classroom. Here's what it sounds like when third and fourth graders are talking about this current event, or this, historical injustice that we're learning about. I think if you give families a sense of what's actually happening in the classroom, it's helpful. They can't imagine it. How could they, right? They're not in that space. And then from the family point of view, if you do get information about a unit or about a conversation that's happened in the classroom, I think it's important, A, to kind of study your own self before you have a conversation with kids, right? So if we're talking about some historical injustice, or you're not sure about how to talk about race with your child, I think you want to kind of study your own self and do kind of some of your own work before you enter into the conversation. And then again, I think you can lead with, I heard this is happening in your classroom. Like, tell me about it, right? Like, what's going on? How's that feeling for you? Like, what are you talking about? I'm curious. So I think those are my two spaces that I went. Eric, what about you?
Um, I really appreciate that response, Cara, and I'm going to do something that I rarely do. It's I'm going to cite some scholarships. So really, I think it's practitioner frame facing scholarship that I really like, and this is
Great.
Karen Mapp's dual capacity framework for parent and community engagement. And really, what it talks about is both teachers and educators building up their capacity to build with and partner with parents, and also us thinking about parents and their capacity and what they can do. And in the revised framework, Matt lays out these sort of six roles that we can think about families as schools are engaging them. And I think they provide some really nice buckets for us to think about all sorts of possibilities. And so I'll just name those six roles. The first would be think about parents as co-creators,
Mm,
next as supporters, third as encouragers, fourth as monitors, fifth as advocates, and sixth as models. And I think when you think about those potential roles that families can play, caregivers can play, I think there's a lot we can do. And so I'm thinking specifically around some work that the three of us did when we were working with some elementary curriculum that had some pretty charged topics. One of the things we were saying is not only sort of send that letter home, this is what we're doing, but like checking on your students, right? Checking on your children, right? Like
yeah.
monitor, see what's going on with them. How are they responding? Ask them what happened today in school with a real specific lens of like, whoa, we were dealing with some pretty, hard history in a particular
Mm,
lesson. And so I think those various roles can be helpful. So the monitor piece, but then I also get really excited about the co-creator. Like, what is the wisdom that families have around engaging young people that we can bring into
mm,
school, given the stuff that we're talking about? What does that look like, right? Or what's the experience at home that we can kind of build off of and share? And so that idea of co-creator, I think, is really exciting for some possibilities. And so know that both schools and parents need to be thinking about, or schools and families need to be thinking about these multiple roles that families can play.
mm.
Oh my gosh, I love all of your ideas. Love the research. Thank you for citing that. And I actually was just thinking, like, very initial idea brainstorm, but how cool would it be if there was actually a circle where we are sharing the conversations that we maybe had at home about said topic. Like the homework is literally just go home and have a conversation. Now, I also want to like asterisk this because I know a lot of my high schoolers like maybe don't have family, like they are the only ones at home at a particular given time, and it's hard to like time wise communicate. But if you gave them enough lead time, like in the next week, have this conversation, right? And then you can either audio record, bring a transcript, just like give a summary, and then we get to just like dive into and kind of analyze and unpack. Like, I mean, there's so many things you could do there, right? But like unpack and talk through, like, here are all these varied perspectives and where might they come from and what's the most generous interpretation of each and what are the values
Mm,
that underlie this? Like, there's so much richness that could happen. And in a sense, that's like a little bit different from maybe co creating curriculum, but it is co creating the experience of like talking about a thing that could be so cool. And as a family member, I would be really excited to, I don't know, have our family's voice like somewhere in an educational space as well. I don't know. This is just like an idea, but other ideas, thoughts?
I love that idea. If I could just build, I just have two like maybe sort of additions to that. I want to kind of build off of it. It's really exciting. The first is one just to name the value of it, because by far the most valuable experience I did in my education was like the immigration history of my family, right? And my father told me
mm,
all this stuff, which was so cool. My mother had passed, so I was able to learn about, her story as well. And it's just been profound and it sticks with me. Talk about a valuable project. I called it,
yeah.
I think, Lithu from Lithuania to Louisiana, dot, 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 something the story. And I got all this like cool little background. Um, and so what you're doing here, Lindsay, is you're saying there's other possibilities around current events, other issues. So it's not the sort of big sort of research, like what's your thought on X? What's your thought on Y? Whether it's an issue, a values question. And so I love just
Mm,
having sort of these smaller, sort of focused conversations around timely issues or underlying things such as values. So that's really exciting. Then the second thing, just in terms of you mentioned some of the challenges in terms of how to do that, right? I think we can think about discussions also being like, text messages or notes. I know that much of my youth was mediated by like me leaving something on the counter for my dad and him getting home at 11 and filling out the form and me waking up in the morning and the form was filled out. And so, what could that look like? So I think there's, with technology or the old school note, there's many ways you can have this sort of exchange of
mm.
ideas between, families, caregivers, parents, and children, and then bring those into schools in very intentional ways. So I think that's just a really exciting thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
No, I mean, I love everything that you named. And I also really love the capacity for kind of role modeling what a kind of intergenerational conversation could look like. I think there's so many of us who would benefit. I mean, actually, all of us would benefit from generational conversation. And I think folks sometimes don't know where to look or what that could look like. And so I also think like the capacity for learning from each other, be it from a note or an actual space or from a transcript, I think the recognition of the importance of that and here's how to do it would make people hungry for more and also would help people see what that's like, feel what that's like, and the capacity for learning from each other across generations.
As I've been thinking about the Massachusetts civics showcases too, I've also been thinking about this idea of like civics both in school and at home, and thinking about
Mm,
like how do we as families, like either in conjunction with the school or separate from the school, like feel agentic enough or like informed enough to know like what does civic action look like and how can that look in different communities at the family level or like the city or town level. And also thinking about the mindset, what is it, mind shift podcast, which I just like was sharing I think with maybe both of you, and I know Cara, you listened to it. It was just so powerful to hear like the co-located preschool and um like elderly community living like in the same space and sharing space together and having like 4-year-olds reading with people in an elderly community. Like that's so beautiful and just makes me think of what is possible and also what is happening in many homes, like many multi-generational homes. And to really leverage that and to say like, hey, this is an actual act of civic action and engagement to like go like hear stories and like bear witness to the testimonies of older folks, and for older folks to do that with younger folks and just be like, let's be in community with one another. What like a beautiful space, both for like current events and controversial issues, but also just the power of story. I think there's so much there that can be learned and applied to novel situations, including just ways of interacting and ways of thinking.
I mean, I think that idea about narrative is really possible, right? So, Eric, you mentioned from Lithuania to Louisiana and that narrative and how powerful it was for you. But also, I think about how powerful it would be for other classmates, right? To hear that story, right? And then get curious about the stories that are in their families. Right? We know the power of personal narrative for just kind of understanding each other and drawing connections. And so I think you're right. Anytime we're in space and able to hear about experiences that are similar and more importantly, different from each other, I think we just build our capacity for understanding and just like appreciation for the way people move in the world.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the free resource for this episode, a dual capacity building framework for family school partnerships, as well as staying engaged in difficult conversations handout. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/blog/237. Now back to the show.
All right. Any final thoughts before we go to our last little bit of like lightning round questions?
I do have it's a half a thought and then it's half a question. Somewhat geared to you, Cara, but Lindsay, you could also weigh in with your infinite wisdom. And that's around like rituals and routines for engaging kids at home. And so I'm thinking about this in two ways. One is
Mm.
I have an amazing teacher educator friend, Katie Reiser, who runs the teacher education at Brown. We used to work together. And she's just an amazing parent and like would have like these like rituals and daily routines with her son and where she would ask him questions about like things that they did, but it was like very specific. And she was a former ELA teacher, and I was like, wow, and her kid was super engaged, and I was like, this is super dope. It's like really intentional, and it's awesome. So I'm wondering about like any like if there's any thoughts around rituals. I'm just trying to figure out the ritual of changing a diaper right now. Um, and then the other aspirational thing I have is last week I was listening to a great podcast interview with the historian David Blight talking about history and the current sort of challenges we have around history, but he was talking about the Declaration of Independence and really what a beautiful document, as fraught as it might be in some
Mm.
respects, what a beautiful document is, and how that he has on every 4th of July, he will listen to it, a reading of it. And he says it brings tears to his eyes. And it's like, I'm all about the barbecues, I'm all about the chills. I don't want to get like super duper like, but I'm wondering about like kind of ritualizing, like some sort of family ritual where we do something together, where we get deep around values, principles, some of the things that are underlying these high emotion issues
Mm.
in some sort of consistent way. Not if it's not daily, but sometime on a special holiday. So, Carl, I'm just wondering, like, as a veteran parent, what are your thoughts around like rituals and routines?
So first of all, I do love thinking about rituals and I think we don't often share them, right? Outside. So I can think of a few that we did. So the first was just the understanding that when we sat down at the dinner table together, we would do onions and orchids. So what's something that was good in your day and what was something that was not good in your day? And having that ritual every day, you got some information. B, we all shared, so adults shared also. And you could model how, it might be a big thing, it might be a little thing, right? So both positive and negative, right? My orchid could be a really good cup of coffee, or it could be something really big, right? So I think there's that. And then the other ritual that I can think of two more. The other one that we did was we would often talk about happy and thankfuls. So like, what are you happy or thankful for? And I think that kind of cultivated again, like just an awareness of the world. And I would say the third thing that we did always as a family was we talked about articles and the news and the things that were around, right? So the newspaper, we had hard copy, it was on the table. We would share things that we read in magazines. Hey, I just read it about this. What do you think? And so from a young age, I think just talking about world events was typical in the house, and my kids still talk to me about world events. So I think that was just, I don't know, there's 3 different things that we did. Is that helpful?
So helpful. That is amazing. Eric,
Totally.
brilliant
Thank you.
question.
Oh my goodness. And now you 2 need to come up with your rituals and tell me what to be doing now, because whatever age they'll work.
I have been thinking about this question and I never thought to just ask anyone. So this is so good, Eric, that you actually asked the question. And Kara, you're brilliant. So that's awesome. I have been thinking a lot about like feedback, like the act of like learning through feedback and like learning from mistakes and like not
Mm.
seeking perfection. And so we have not instituted this. This is not a ritual I do, but it's one I aspire to is like, what's one thing you learned today? Like what is one thing you like made a mistake around and can learn from kind of thing.
Ooh.
I don't know how I'll phrase that for a 3-year-old, but something like that. And then also I think like this might not be a ritual for the dinner table, although dinner table, I just want to share. I was recently with my dad and he was like, what the best moments of my life were like sitting around the dinner table when you guys were all in high school and able to like share stories of your day. And I was like, that is beautiful. And I'm sure there are
Oh.
many like more positive things to come, but like I just was like, that's great. And also, I just want to like go back in time and be like, what did we share? And like, how did you start that conversation? Because as a parent, I'm like, like that seems like a really cool environment you cultivated. Like, how did that happen? So awesome. Dinner table conversations. But I also think about these moments of frustration or like I think about driving the most. Like someone cuts you off in traffic, right? And you're in the moment, you're frustrated. And we have tried to ritualize my kid and I like what in the moment can we do to empathize with that person as opposed to being like they are a terrible human being, they have like wronged us and now we will rage. Like I'll just be like, okay, that person must have like maybe they have a person who's like giving birth right now in the back and they really needed to get to the hospital, right? Or like that person was just like thinking about something that like maybe they just got fired from their job and their mind is somewhere else, so they just missed that red light and they just went right through it. Like, and it's really cool to see that at 3 years old my kid is starting to actually be like, well, maybe they have that. And I mean right now it's just repeating things that I've said in the past, but it's really cool that the response is like, that person did something to me, but maybe it's because of this other reason. So that's a cool
Mm.
ritual. So thank you again for asking the question. Thank you guys for your brilliance. I realize we're almost at end of time. Lightning round. What is one thing you would encourage someone engaging with this episode to do like today or tomorrow? Like a very small start. I know we talked about a lot of things. So like what's like one easy thing they could do to get started here?
Can I jump in? Because I got a thought. Because
Yeah.
I'm about to do this in 2 hours and 10 minutes when I go pick up my child, my 2-year-old. I'm gonna ask his teachers at daycare, like, what did y'all learn today? Like, what did y'all do today? And then instead of asking my son, like, how was today? Like, tell me a little bit more about groceries, or tell me a little bit more about dinosaurs, or whatever it is. And so it's this idea of going back to like getting the sense of like what's going on in your
Mm.
school in the school setting, so you can kind of at home talk about it more specifically. That's one thing that I'm going to do as a parent. I think as an educator, I would also then think about how can I share what we're doing with parents a bit more.
Okay, so Eric, I'm going to piggyback on that. When I was in the elementary school classroom, wrote a note home to families every week. At the bottom, I would give 3 things. Ask your kid about da 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 da. Ask your child. So exactly that. Like I fed some information, so educators can do that really easily. And
Nice.
I think from my parent hat, the thing that I would do is pick up my kid and share something that I had read or heard or was on my mind or heart, and just open a conversation and see how it feels to share that.
Mm.
Love it. Amazing answers. One thing you're learning about lately. It could be parenting related or it could be just totally for fun.
Oh my gosh, there are so many things. What am I learning about lately? Yeah, parenting related. I am thinking a lot about how to support my kids in executive function and what does it look like to try and set them up for independence and give them a sense of like moving forward and being able to thrive executive functionally on their own. That's what I'm learning about.
I am learning a lot about the value of of turmeric extract for joint health. And
Oh,
that is because I am a father of a 2-year-old that I am picking up and tossing around in pools and oceans. And my shoulders are not liking life a lot recently. And I tried this extract from Whole Foods 3 days ago. And for the past 3 days, and it's been really impressive. And I did know a little bit about the science and the anti-inflammatory backed by science effects of turmeric, but I've experienced it for the past few days, and so it's been really cool.
love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And finally, where can people connect with you or learn more about you?
So you can connect with me through my website, karapranikoff.com. My email is there. I would love to talk shop with any teacher or parent, basically anytime in the day. Love to talk shop.
Yeah, my day job, I am on the faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So if you just look out for Eric Soto-Shed, Harvard Graduate School of Education, HGSE for shorter, you can get all my contact information, a little bit more about my work, and also really open to engage folks.
Thank you guys so much. This was absolutely wonderful. I appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Lindsay. Love talking with both of you.
If you're looking for support to help you talk to your child about history, current events, or other high emotion topics, we've got you. Families are now welcome to join EduBoost. Here's how it works. Your kid brings up a topic and you're not sure what to say next, or something happens in the world or in your kid's life and you want to talk to your kid about it, but you're unsure how to bring it up. Immediately, you send us a message on Slack telling us what's going on via text or audio message. Slack can be used on your phone as well as your computer, so you can totally message us from the grocery store checkout line or at 2 a.m. when your question's literally keeping you awake at night. You get a personalized response and any relevant resources within 24 hours from me or my awesome colleague, Kara Pranikoff. Visit lindsaybethlyons.com/families for more information on family coaching.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.